Our vessel put in at Bermuda for repairs, having been badly injured in a severe storm. Our captain was thrown in prison, and the ship was seized. It was with the greatest difficulty that we secured our passage for another ship, for our money had all been spent. After our arrival in Carolina, we suffered all sorts of evils. Our eldest brother died of a fever. That was 18 months after they arrived here. 18 months after coming here. We ourselves have been exposed since leaving France to all kinds of affliction in the forms of sickness, pestilence, famine, poverty, and the roughest labor. I have been for 6 months at a time in this country without even tasting bread. Meanwhile, working like a slave, tilling the ground. Indeed, I have spent 3 or 4 years without knowing what it was like to eat bread when I wanted it. God has been very good to us in enabling us to bear up under trials of every kind, unquote. And the original of that letter is in the Charleston Museum, the Gibbs Museum in Charleston. So we have that artifact about her. And I think you can tell from that letter, she is an educated woman. There is no doubt about that. She has a good command of the language. She knows what she's talking about. And I think something else we can tell from this, she was a determined woman. She was not going to let it get her. She was not. She was a fighter. So once they got here, the sister and 2 brothers, Judith married a man by the name of No Royer. He was a weaver in the Huguenot community. He had immigrated with his parents from Tours, France, and this was considered a mésalliance. He was below her in that social strata that we know, that the English and the French and all the other European countries took care of. But he was a worker. He saved, he bought land, and he built them a small house on Church Street. Yeah, we know that name. Church Street in Charleston. So, even though maybe the marriage was maybe frowned on by some people, it certainly worked for that particular couple that had 3 children, all boys, No, John, and Peter. And I think this is another interesting little tidbit here. In his will, her husband left his entire estate to his wife. He did not leave it to his oldest son. How about that? He left it to his wife. They worked the land together. In one place, when I was talking about the clodbusters, there was a description of this very long saw that had a handle on both ends, a whipsaw, it was called, and they cut down trees together, one holding one end of the saw and one holding the other. So she was definitely a partner in the way that they settled here in America. Royer died at age 35. And you think about it, y'all, that sounds very, very young, and it is very young. But you think about how they've been working, the life they had been working. And it makes sense that the lifespan would not be very long. And after he died, Judith married another French Huguenot, again below her social standing. But he was a neighbor, and his name was Pierre Manigault. And we know the Manigault name from Charleston. Manigault was a cooper. He built barrels. And if you think about during the lifestyle, during the times that we're looking at here, barrels were very important. And so he was a good one, and he began to make some money. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, Gabriel and Judith, and they lived in the same house that her first husband had built. Makes sense. They had a house, right? On Church Street, even. So they stayed there. And the house was big enough that Judith began to take in boarders. people passing through, people coming to the country for the first time, needing a place to stay before they decided where they were going to go. And that's what she did. And as I understand it, there was always a full house. It wasn't just the 5 children and the parents there. They went to the French Huguenot Church congregation on Church Street. You can go to that church. It's a beautiful church. It is not the original church that they attended. The original church was organized in 1681, and they built their first church building in 1687. That particular church building was destroyed in one of those many fires in Charleston in 1796, but they quickly rebuilt it. They had all 5 of their children baptized, christened in that particular church. They were church goers, both her husband and herself. Pierre decided to expand his territories, decided to expand his business territories. And so he began in 1705 to build distilleries. Sort of goes along with the barrel making, doesn't it? Yes, it does. And he became wealthy, more wealthy than he had been. By 1710, he was one of the 3rd richest men in this particular colony. And his son, Gabriel, was picked right up on that. Now we're getting closer to the Revolution. He became one of Charleston's greatest merchants. He expanded on that legacy that was left by his father. And in fact, he loaned to the South Carolina Revolutionary War government $220,000 to help them with their endeavors. And I can't put that in today's term, but that's a healthy little check that he wrote, I would think, yes? And just as a sidebar to that, he did receive $44,000 of that back, which I thought was, that was good. Good, solid investment there. Being born in 1665 in France, Judith Guiton, what I believe was a brave woman. To leave France at the age of 19 with her mother and her 2 brothers. She survived it by working hard, by doing the next thing, if you will, putting aside her position because of a little bit higher middle class, everything, to think that freedom to choose and her own religion and to honor it were more important than other things. It's a little interesting too. She died at the age of 45 in 1711, about the time that her husband became filthy rich for that time. Doesn't it? Go figure. That's the way it happens sometimes. But I think it's interesting that she worked so hard, and she worked with both her husbands, to make their lives work. And you can visit her grave as a flat tombstone in the French Protestant Church cemetery today, or tomorrow, whatever. I said I like quotes, and since I write mainly about women and research women in South Carolina, and Helen Keller is not a South Carolinian, but she was another very brave woman that did not allow her handicaps to put her down. She once said, "Remember, no effort that we make to attain something beautiful is ever lost." And I'm going to say that again. Remember, no effort that we make to attain something beautiful is ever lost. And I think Judith Guiton gives us a good hint on what that can look like. Thank you. Questions? Oh, I'm sorry. What? teasing. I'm teasing.
The letter that Manigault, or Deacon,
Yes.
was that in French or English?
Would it be what?
Was it written in French or English? The letter.
The letter, I've only found it in English, but I would bet, since she was writing to her brother that was not English speaking, that she wrote it in French. And what I have seen is the translation of it. That makes sense to my brain. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
So what's the connection of these Manigauts to Manigault Ferry, which is on the Santee? Marion kind of hung out in that area?
The connection was Huguenots. That's the connection. That the Huguenots stuck together. And the fact that the Manigauts, what is it, Gun and Garden magazine? Garden and Gun, sorry, thank you. The man that spearheaded that was a Manigault. I don't know if you knew that or not. I just found that out randomly not too long ago. As far as a real connect, I don't know, I don't have the history on that, but I do know that they stuck together.